Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sports Hut podcast. This is, I don't know how many weeks in, but all seem to be enjoying it really well, apart from the people that just seem to not want to show up. Shahan can't make it. He had a meeting with a floor that he decided to fall through a chair at the weekend. I'm sitting on a different chair this time because he broke my chair. Mitchell can't make it. The rumour was that he fell down a flight of stairs. We hope you a speedy recovery, Mitchell. And Bob, Bob just didn't want to be here. So going through what we've got to go with, end of the season, plenty to talk about. First of all, James, there has been a lot of managerial changes. It's a managerial merry-go-round. What's your thoughts on the big jobs that have been up for grabs now and managers to take them?
Well, let me begin by saying I'm very glad that Mitchell is well from his fall. Last thing we wanted was a funeral for a friend. So I'm just happy that all is well. Yeah, but as you said, there's a lot of changes in the managerial scene in football. Zidane left Real Madrid, Conte left Inter Milan, Nuno has left Wolves, Pirlo has unexpectedly left Juventus, Gualtieri has left Lille after winning League One, and Hansi Flick left Bayern Munich. Not this week, but it's also another managerial departure from a big team. And then there's rumours that Pochettino might be leaving PSG as well. So managers are leaving all over the place. And I think just to begin this topic, I'd like to ask everyone very quickly, why do you think so many managers are leaving? So I'll go, Gavin, why do you think so many managers are leaving the teams that they're managing?
I think for some it's been down to a case of the success hasn't been there. I know the rumours around Conte's one was an unhappy discussion about finances with the owner. Zidane, I think, has been a case of he hasn't achieved what he wanted to, so he's just thought, I'll get out of there. Pochettino, by the looks of it, if he leaves, it's going to be a case that he's walking back into London and being like, kicking the door down, the bitch is back. But I can't see that one happening myself. I just think it's been a case of lack of success for some, and other people has been a case of there's new ventures. Hansi Flick, he said he's going to get a Germany job after the Euros. So I think it's a good time for a manager to look into the market.
Yeah,
a bigger job.
I think so, and I think we'll be speaking about Tottenham slightly later on, but I do think Daniel Levy has just went take me to the pilot, Pochettino at the wheel type of mode. It's not much original thinking. But Martin, do you think Gavin's got or covered the basis, or do you think COVID is also playing a part? Managers are leaving.
I think a lot of managers, the business that is football has turned. There's a lot of teams that must win now. It used to be that you're sort of one or two team leagues, but now the teams below are starting to fight and get better, and one or two team leagues are turning into 4 and 5 team leagues. You look at Spain, Atletico won that. Simeone, 7 years I think he's been there, and they weren't a very big team before that. The manager's the easiest one to change as well, as opposed to sort of changing the whole team. I just think that the owners get tired very quickly. I think managers should be staying for a lot longer, but it just seems to be a short-term job now. You're only going to be there for a couple of years, so do what you can and then add to your CV and get out somewhere else, go chase some money.
I think that's got to do with the way that continental football teams set up their structure with a director of football, and they're the continuity, and the manager is actually a head coach. So they can just get rid of a manager quite easily without overhauling the structure. So it's less expensive to sack a manager compared to how it would be in the case of Scotland and Celtic. And but we're going to move on. Bruce, have you got any thoughts on why so many managers are leaving?
Well, basically along the lines of what Gavin and Martin were saying, a lot of what they were saying rang true. However, what you were saying about COVID, you've got to remember we have had a year like no other, really. And that has caused a level playing field at times along the, be it through maybe teams not having fans at games, it has caused a bit more of a level playing field. But as I keep saying, and I've said on many occasions, football is a result-based business. And if you're not providing results, you're not going to be there very long. So lack of success, people not meeting deadlines and expectations, maybe a mixture of both of those.
I think COVID as well, there's also the human element to it. And obviously there's not been as much interaction with the outside world, so you have been more focused with your club, which makes arguments more likely because you can't leave the area, and also you might just get fed up with the surrounding area, and it's actually only the way to change the environment around you just now is to actually quit your job and go elsewhere. So it might be a human element to it as well. And then I always like to dream about managers and teams that just would perfectly align with each other. So out of the teams that have recently had a manager depart, is there any team that stands out and you go, yes, I want a manager for that team? Because I would love to see Conte at Real Madrid, because it is a complete clash of cultures with the Spanish words just went out of my head, but the superstars of Real Madrid.
Galacticos.
Yes, the superstars. Would they work underneath a Conte team, which is hard work, running, pressing? It would be very interesting to see. But is there any managerial appointments that you'd want to see happen to teams that you have no emotional attachment to?
I think the automatic one for a neutral would be Zidane to Juve. Mm-hmm. I think that one's an automatic, but there's also rumours that he might be taking over France after the Euros, which again would be an incredible thing to see as a neutral. But apart from that, not really. I think it's going to be very interesting, especially considering how the market has changed recently in terms of Celtic fucking up and not getting their man. Daniel Levy, everyone he seems to want, he seems to get approached by another club or sign a new contract. Will the same thing happen with Perez and Real Madrid, or Zhuang, whatever his name is, at Inter Milan? And it could be interesting.
I think it's weird with managers because everybody's got a sort of a level that they're at. So you've got your top managers, and some of the managers that were top managers actually dropped down a level, like your Mourinho's. Mourinho was one of the ones that everybody wanted. Then he went to Tottenham, and then nobody wants him now. And there's other managers in there. I mean, Ancelotti's dropped down to Everton, but obviously they were doing well at the start of the season, not as much now. But there's only so many managers in that top bracket, and there's a lot of teams in the top bracket looking for managers just now. And then as you step down the brackets, you've got teams like Crystal Palace, Roy Hodgson retiring. I mean, that's a reasonably sized job that maybe out of reach for those managers that we're talking about, top level managers, is probably out of reach for them. But then it's the next bracket doing managers. Is Gerrard of that ilk yet? He's somebody that's been spoken about for it. Lampard's looking for a job.
West Brom as well, because Sam Allardyce is with West Brom.
Yeah, and so there's a whole lot at all different levels going down.
Yeah. And then you've obviously got, Gavin mentioned it, the situation at Celtic where Eddie Howe thunders down, which, yeah, disappointing. But if the rumours are true, and that the reason why he's not come up is because a couple of the people from Bournemouth wouldn't come up. Celtic were happy to pay for it all, but the backroom staff just didn't want to come up to Glasgow. And then Eddie Howe pulled out. It might actually be a blessing in disguise that he's not come up to Glasgow. Because if you can't handle going up north without your mates, then you're not going to handle the press of the old firm.
I think with it, I mean, the Celtic fans were following the Yellow Brick Road, and they were there. They were going to help Eddie Howe but it's goodbye Yellow Brick Road, and they need to start again. They have no idea where they're going. It's kind of, he's been in, and how many times have we said that he's going to be signing on this podcast, and he's just turned it round. And
No, I'll correct you there. How many times has James said he'll be signing on this podcast?
I like that you mentioned the Yellow Brick Road because, of course, that's linked to the Wizard of Oz. And the manager now being linked to Celtic is from Australia, is Australian. He's currently managing in Japan. And if somebody asked me on Thursday, have you ever heard of Andrzej, some Greek name? I'm going to go.
Postegloglu or whatever his name is.
Popolopodopoulos.
I have done my research.
A little bit racist.
I have done. I've listened to a few podcasts that he's gave. Watched a couple of games that his team currently manages. I'm a dedicated fan, and he says that he needs time to come to a club because he's got no plan B. It's plan A and it's all out attack. And I was like, oh dear, this sounds like a recipe for disaster or something that will go wonderfully. It's going to be one or the other, and I think the odds are stacked to terribly wrong. He would need time. Champions League qualifier so soon and so important to Celtic. I don't think he'll get the time from the fans.
Oh no.
But weirder things have happened. But yeah, he said in a podcast that he liked Marco Bielsa and Jurgen Klopp. That was the style of football that he tried to play. And Jurgen Klopp...
mid-table.
Jurgen Klopp talks about his style of football being rock and roll, high press, high energy. Is Celtic going to have the Crocodile Rock football with the guy from Oz leading us in the green? And there you go.
I think that Celtic, the problem with Bielsa and his style of football, which is great, is the amount of goals they concede. But it is back to the Brazilians of the 90s where you score 3, we'll score 4. And it's a great, entertaining style of football. The fans all love it and hate it at the same time. But if it's down to you're not going to have much time to hit the ground running, it's a very difficult style of football to instill in a new team in a short period of time to hit the ground running. To obviously Celtic are going to want to win the league, so it is win games from the first game of the season. It's not if they lose enough games in the first 5-6 games of the season, league can just about be over, depending on how Rangers do. But there is obviously talk of Gerrard being linked to other places in England as well. Mm-hmm. So whether that happens,
one of those teams that Gerrard will be linked to, if my theory comes correct, and Graham Potter goes to Tottenham, the Brighton job, it could be Eddie Howe, which would be ironic because Tottenham would have stopped Celtic getting the person that I wanted to become Celtic manager. But also it could be Steven Gerrard being linked with the Brighton job, and I think he would be tempted with that because Brighton are a good team with potential.
Good squad, very good squad.
Very good squad.
Yeah.
Bruce, as a Rangers man, do you think Gerrard's got the ego to take a job in Brighton?
So, first of all, I'm very surprised to hear you mention Graham Potter. It's not like you. But we know that after the podcast, you're going to go through the other room and you're going to light the candles round your shrine to him, and you're going to kiss the picture and everything. And we know that you and the picture of Graham Potter in your other room's very, very close. However,
I was like, that was scarily accurate until you mentioned Graham Potter.
So, with your question around Steven Gerrard,
can you feel the love tonight?
Steven Gerrard is going to go down south at some point. There is no question about that. he is a very good manager. He, will pick up a job down south, no bother at all.
What job though? What
Will he be
level
tempted?
is he at?
Well,
Is he?
so
He's not
will-
being mentioned for the Spurs job. Is it more Crystal Palace, West Brom, Brighton?
No, well, you've got to make a name for yourself, haven't you? And you've got to build up a history behind you, and
Because
a
you're not going to do that
decent
being at
acumen.
a small club like Rangers.
Well, you're not going to do it with one league title behind you at the moment. Do you know what I mean? That these things take time. You need to build an acumen, and
So what you're saying is
So
Callum
will
Davis
he
has
be
got more of a
tempted by the right
reputation
job?
than
Of
Steven
course he
Gerrard
will.
at the moment.
Will Steven Gerrard be one of the favourites for the Brighton job? I don't see why not, because he's a very good manager. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
So what you're saying is Callum Davison's got more of a reputation than Steven Gerrard at the moment.
It's got more.
Not at all.
Unless
Not
time.
at all.
That's what
It's interesting that Callum Davison was one of the top 2 successful managers this season. St John's was one of the top 2 successful clubs this season.
No, they were actually the top successful club.
Well, they didn't win the league.
And St.
They won a
John's
couple of cups. They didn't win the league title.
St Johnstone's also the second most successful team in Scotland in the past decade with 3 trophies, behind Celtic in first place with 19.
There you go. See.
So
How many Rangers got in that time?
before we go on, I think, yes, it's going to be interesting to see how the managers go and who's going to be appointed where. I think Crystal Palace will be the one that I'll be interested in. I think they are going to go for an attacking style of football, and I think it could go into mayhem pretty quickly.
Sam Allardyce.
Sam Allardyce is who I would go for, but I think they're going to go for somebody like Frank Lampard or Eddie Howe.
I think the other job we didn't mention is the under-21 England manager as well. That's up for grabs as well just now. So Lampard and Gerrard are both they have been talked about for that.
James, I'm not an expert in a lot of these things. However, you said that Eddie Howe's getting the Brighton job and he's going for the Crystal Palace job. He can't have both.
He's going to get linked with both.
Do you know what I mean?
But he's going to get linked with both.
Very possibly, but he can't have both. He's certainly not going to Celtic though.
Good observation.
Well, you know me.
Watching the news and all that, it's a good job. Douglas Ross and have 4 jobs at the same time.
Well, possibly.
I don't know if that's.
Don't you just love our little chats?
Aye.
Brighton v Crystal Palace in Premier League with Eddie Howe managing both teams.
Can you feel the love tonight?
It would be something.
It would be. But before we descend into chaos, I will pass over to Gavin, who is absolutely elated, even though you can't sense it because he's hungover as hell. But he is elated because his team, Chelsea, were victorious in the Champions League. I'll pass it over to you, and you can give us your thoughts about the evening and what you can remember.
I was hungover, however, I'm fine now. I didn't have a voice this morning when I woke up. There was a lot of screaming and shouting, but yes, it was
my neighbours said hi, by the way. Thanks.
That's what they weren't saying that last night. Shut up. No, but yeah, a busy week for finals in the footballing world. I'm not going to start in the Champions League though. What I'm going to do is I'm wanting to start on one of the predictions that I made about Dundee winning the playoff and being promoted, which actually happened. They blew Kilmarnock away like a candle in the wind, destroyed them. How did any of us get to see the 2 legs? What did we think of it?
I'm blocked by Dundee on Twitter. So I can't.
I watched the aftermath of the first leg. I didn't see the first leg, but I watched all the second leg, and I think when you watch the build up to the game, obviously it was 2-1 in the first game. Kyle Lafferty and everybody was on, and they're all saying, "Yeah, I'm still standing. They're still there. They've got the chance to actually do it and stay in the league." And they just fell to shit. I mean, there was a couple of minutes that they had the chance to. I think it was a couple of mistakes. I think it's Broadfoot actually, who just didn't cover runs, or he slipped or something, and it was all it took. Just a couple of goals, and then Dundee were solid after that. But I'm just happy to get rid of another plastic pitch at Scottish football. And now, interestingly enough, to diverse slightly, now that Hamilton and Kilmarnock are out of the top league, we can now have a vote, because it needs to be 11-1 for them not to allow plastic pitches back in the league. So if we have a vote now, they might actually have it so that plastic pitches aren't allowed in the top league, which would be awesome.
Martin, and your amazing dreams that you have.
Not better.
I find the most interesting thing to come out of this in terms of Kilmarnock's confirmed relegation is the fact that they now only have 5 senior players on the books, and a lot of them have departed. They've been in talks to try and get some more contracts renewed, but to only have 5 players, and the fact that the off season is now a lot shorter for the lower Scottish leagues in terms of with the Premier Sports Cup that is now called. I do think it's going to be a difficult season for them in terms of how much they've got to rebuild. I would have loved to see that fan, the one Kilmarnock fan who goes mental, the bald guy. I would have loved to see his reaction about it all.
They still have their pies.
Best pies in Scotland.
Yeah.
Browns, I think, make them brilliant.
Now, another big. What's on you, Bruce?
Wait, pie connoisseurs on.
I was just about to say, if there was anyone can talk about the quality of a pie, surely this is where I weighed in, and I'm going to have to make sure I try that out because I'm.
You've not had a Kelly pie?
I've never had a Kelly pie, mate.
What?
Never had a Kelly pie.
Martin,
I think they sell them in Spark. They're about £3.50, but they're good.
Martin, Bruce has been at
Brown's
Rugby
Kelly
Park.
pie.
Bruce has been at Rugby Park as much times as he's been at Ibrox. But moving on from that, we're going to talk about the other big news in Scottish football is that Kelty Hearts promoted to the Scottish League 2 with Brecon going down the drain hole.
And then the manager jumps straight away. Aye.
Yeah, tells you a lot about what the thing they're called, but a huge achievement for them, do you not think?
Yes. I think it. I do think the Lowland League, and actually I've got issues with the Lowland League as well just now, but I'll leave that alone.
The B teams.
Complete rip-off. That was going to be a subject. If I knew that James was so much for it, that would have stuck in. The Lowland teams, I feel that there's so many of the Lowland teams that are better than the teams in the second division. I think at the Highland team, sorry. But obviously they'll just be stuck in a spin-off because of the Ugly Sisters trying to trample that league too. Anyway,
I think it shows you the circle of life in Scottish football and how, Barry Ferguson goes down to Kelty Hearts and then jumps ship right after promotion.
Kevin Thompson in there now.
Yeah.
Kevin Thompson's in there now. Another good coach.
Barry Ferguson was the manager, and that's because I've recently moved to just outside Alloa, and I said Saturdays that Celtic aren't playing, I'm going to go down to Alloa Stadium and not anymore. I'm going to Stirling Albion.
Well, to move south of the border, there've been another 2 playoff finals in the League One with Blackpool winning 2-1 over Lincoln today, and also the Championship, which took place yesterday. Brentford beating Swansea. I think Brentford's a team that a lot of neutrals do follow because of how everyone feels they've done it the right way. They have progressed up the league the right way. Wait until James grabs a book.
James is, I think he's killing a spider, or not yet, definitely getting a book.
Yep, so basically, if anyone's not aware of the story, they appointed the manager based on the stats, the expected goals, ratios, and a lot of people were against it to begin with, but it's worked for them. They have done it the right way. They've not went and bought loads of money. They have a very good turnover. I found that very, very good. But imagine how dangerous that team would be if they kept a hold of their 2 best players that they sold last season in Watkins and Ben Rama.
But this is without. There's other books available, but this is a book that I've read by James Trippett.
Is it on Audible? Because it's the only way I'm reading it.
James,
It is on Audible.
post-COVID, can I borrow that book from you?
If you're happy,
Fully sanitized.
if you're happy to have lines underneath it after I've took notes, but
Vandalised the book.
yep. So Brentford,
Exactly. How
Brentford,
rude.
Brentford basically got bought over by a guy who ran a bookies, and the bookies he ran used expected goals as well as more sophisticated measurements to basically beat the bookies in predictability in the Asian market, and put £1 million bets on, and basically become so rich that he could actually afford to buy a football team. So he bought Brentford and used the same measurements to actually run the recruitment policy for the manager, the director of football, but also the players. And they have the philosophy of they will sell players if they're getting more money than what they're worth. So I would actually, Tony might actually go this summer. And it might sound crazy for people who don't know how Brentford work, but Brentford will sell if they get more money for Tony than they think he's worth, because they think the
Don't have
football
an issue with
market
that.
is so inefficient that if you're trending, if you're on trends, your price overinflates for what you're worth. And then they'll buy the guy in the championship with the highest XG, who's undervalued, and then set them up in the Premier League. But fancy football tip, get Brentford players in because they will get points.
I think what I'm most looking forward to about Brentford being promoted is the fact that they're going to have a new licensed stadium in FIFA next year. Because these are the little things I appreciate in life.
I'd have loved to see Man United and Arsenal and everybody go to Oakwell and Barnsley be promoted, but I think Brentford were always going to be the team. I mean, they've been so close last year. I think they were always going to do it this year.
But the question
They
that
deserve
I
it.
want to know is, who would win the XG, Brighton v Brentford?
Oof.
Depends who the Brighton manager is at the time.
Graham Potter. He's not joining Spurs in this example. So it's an inaccurate.
What happened to Eddie Howe?
Eddie, wow. Graham Potter v Brentford. There you go. Who's winning the XG?
I think it's got to be Brighton with Potter in terms of. I think it's because their squad's a bit stronger in terms of.
I think Brentford have got the better attacking players.
James, what do you think?
Well, because Tony, who was player of the season for Brentford, rejected Celtic in the summer, I'm going to say Brighton.
Cool, I'll say Brentford.
So moving away from that, we're going to Europe. The two big finals that happened this week. The one on, I believe it was a Thursday. Europa League, Manchester United against Villarreal, and whenever it was in Gdansk in Poland.
Gav struggles with his days of the week, Martin. Be kind.
Yeah, I've got socks with them on it, and I'm not wearing any.
The length of the penalty shootout, it could have ended on penalty.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But yeah, 11-10 on penalties. De Gea missing his, getting his saved by Geronimo. Really, what a name, Geronimo. But Villarreal winning, Unai Emery winning his fourth, I believe, Europa League.
It's like Arsenal are turning into Spurs with people winning things as soon as they leave.
The curse of North London.
I obviously watched the game. Man United are a better team than I would say in a lot of the finals that have been recently, more of the cups and the playoffs. The better teams lost because the lesser team they want it more, and they've put their body on the line, and they've been more organised, and they've had better tactics than the so-called better teams in the games. I'll put that to the Hibs St Johnstone game, the Man United game, and obviously the game we'll talk about in a second. That just because you've got better players doesn't mean you have the divine right to win. You have to have the attitude and the application and the tactics to actually get you over the line. But whether that's down to Solskjaer for not motivating the players enough, Solskjaer for not having the tactics, or Solskjaer for not subbing De Gea and putting somebody else in goals for the penalty shootout.
So it's all
Kind of have
Solskjaer's
to
fault,
play
is that what you're
Solskjaer, yeah, kind of have to. Yeah.
See, what you're saying about someone like Spurs in terms of winning a trophy, another ex-Spurs player is Etienne Capoue winning a trophy after leaving the club.
which takes the number to like 3,000.
Well, that's both him and Kieran Trippier done it this season. So,
Trippier,
but
aye.
it's I think what you're saying about the goalkeeper situation, it was an unbelievable stat that De Gea hadn't saved a penalty since 2016.
It's like 30 penalties or something.
Since then, or since I think it's last season, Henderson has saved 6 out of 9. Some crazy stat like that, and it's like, surely you do a Tim Krul in that situation, you take your keeper off as one of your subs, especially when you get an extra sub. You can use 6 out of 9 subs or whatever you can name on the bench.
I'll go to James for this one as well, but I believe that De Gea is a great shot stopper for anything in and around his body. He uses his legs a lot for saving shots and sort of things like that. Penalty is just only what he does. It's not his specialty. And
saving isn't his specialty.
You've got to take that as a separate part of football. Mm-hmm. That's a speciality thing in penalties. There is a methodology to it and how you do it, and Tim Krul does it, and you can see certain goalkeepers talking to the strikers and trying to put them off. And there was one against Messi. The goalkeeper stood all the way to one side. I think it was only a couple of weeks ago. The goalkeeper stood more to one side than the other side to show that side, and then as soon as Messi took the penalty, he was already 3/4 of the way over before he took it. But even the run-ups to penalties now have all changed. But I like the fact that De Gea had a bit of paper saying where everybody was going to go. And if he had followed that, it might have actually been closer. Not saying he would have saved it, but he would have went the right way more often. But James, what are you thinking about changing goalkeepers? I would have changed goalkeeper just for the psychology aspect of it.
I think the goalkeeper doesn't really make much difference in a penalty shootout. The keeper's not expected to save, and that the keeper is, if you save a penalty, you've gained something, and not saving isn't losing something.
Yeah,
that's the mindset that I would go into a penalty shootout with. But De Gea is a reflex goalkeeper, but he stands stationary at penalties. He has no momentum. So he's not, he's a bad goalkeeper for penalties. So maybe changing it would have worked. But the more interesting thing that I thought was Bruno Fernandes won the coin toss. And decided to go second, which just blew my mind.
The stats on that is 20% less.
Yeah.
So the other one, if you go first, you've got a 20% better chance of winning.
Yeah.
They go second.
There was a statistical study over 20 years saying that if you went first in a penalty shootout, you won 60% of the time. Obviously, second 40%, which is where that 20% figure comes from. But I've always been brought up with the mindset: get your total on the board and put the pressure on, rather than allow the other people to set the narrative.
The pressure's on you.
Yeah, so I thought that was a weird one from Bruno Fernandes, and it's a small thing, but that 20% might have cost them the Europa League.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good point, but now we need to move on to the last final that happened last night, probably the best final of them all.
Sorry, Gavin, we ran out of time, and I guess that's why we call it the Blues. So,
was that the one?
Go on, Gav.
Do you mean, Gav, you try to tell us you can remember it?
Gav.
Was that the one with Vladimir Putin's money versus the United Arab Emirates money?
That's the one.
Yes.
That's the one.
Yes, that one. So I think it was a brilliant game in terms of the tactic side of things. Did Pep overthink? The keeper and the defenders act like, well, they might as well been Mona Lisa and Mad Hatters, you know. It was completely counter-attacking play that Chelsea played and blew him away each time. Chilwell and Reece James possibly changing the fullback situation for England going into the Euros. N'Golo Kante has to be named in the Ballon d'Or possibilities for this season. He's been phenomenal. But James, stop shaking your head. Come on, you cannot deny he's been one of the best players in the world.
Casemiro, past 3 seasons, has been up there all season, playing at the best in the Champions League final and not mentioned at all. Just because you play for an English team doesn't give you automatic right to the Ballon d'Or.
It doesn't, but I think he's been one of the best players and I think he has to get a mention at least, and
Casemiro.
how humble he was.
I think we Kanté, and he is a player that I think lots of or most football fans admire, mainly because of how humble he is. But the journey that he's had, and Kenny's won something over the last 5 or 6 years is Leicester. When Leicester won the league, he's left, went to Chelsea, and he's won something every season. Even when Chelsea didn't win, he won something with France. So he's a World Cup winner, Champions League winner, Premiership winner twice.
10 years ago, he was playing in Ligue 2 in the second tier in France.
Is that for
10 years
the
ago.
Pigeons?
For Cannes. So I got it. I'm just ignoring it, Martin.
I mean, Kanté plays the Makelele role, and the position was named after Makelele.
It needs to be renamed.
Does he do it better than Makelele?
James, your toupee is going to fall off.
Makelele was a top player. He was so underrated at that time.
Kanté's redefining the role.
So what you're deciding is we now just scrap the Makelele role and we're now just going to call it the Kanté role. Is that what's happening?
I think he's redefining.
Sounds like something you buy for a Turkish place.
But putting N'Golo Kanté to one side, if we look at the tactics of the game, Timo Werner once again not being able to hit a barn door and being offside.
Did you see the picture of him pointing to the Chelsea badge he missed?
He was just showing everyone London's blue. That's what he was doing. But it's not only that, Kai Havertz scored the goal to win Chelsea the Champions League. It brings Chelsea's prize total for the Champions League to just under 70 million. Therefore, that one goal has technically repaid about 90% of his transfer fee, which is crazy to think of that. You've also got the Mateo Kovacic. James will be able to tell you this one. Mateo Kovacic has broken the record because he's now won the Champions League something like 5 times, which is the most of one single player to have won it, I believe.
Yeah, up there. I don't know the statistics,
but I think it's a remarkable achievement for a team that.
Considering John McGinn fucking put up in reserves about 6 times in the game a week before.
Yes, I think if you look at it, is it a case of Pep got his tactics wrong? I do think De Bruyne was a big loss when he got injured. Should a striker have played from the start?
No, but
no.
Pep got the tactics wrong, but I know why he did it. He should have started with at least Fernandinho or Rodri. He should have started with the both of them, in my opinion. But at least one of them. Why you play Gundogan as the holding midfielder after the season Gundogan's had, playing further forward? And Fernandinho, he is 36, but he's still one of the best players in the world in that role. So, yeah, Pep overthought that. But the reason why he did it, I think, is because he wanted Bernardo Silva and Foden to basically play off the 2 centre-backs who were right centre-back and left centre-back, and then De Bruyne off the middle centre-back. He wanted to play 3 up front with no strikers, essentially.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work because the Chelsea controlled the midfield, and it was pretty easy to spot early on. 20 minutes in, Chelsea were already in comfortable control of the midfield. And would have been a couple of goals up if Timo Werner could score.
If Timo Werner was an actual striker.
I think looking at it with the tactics side of things, Man City did create chances. I think there was always a Chelsea defender in with a last gasp tackle. There was about 3 times where they've engineered a chance. Rudiger's went in, or James's went in, or Chilwell's went in, and they have threw their bodies on the line and got the block in, got the tackle in, but the chances were made. So I don't think Pep got his tactics completely wrong, because they did make chances. Then you look at the goal that was scored by Chelsea. It was actually the guy who can barely hit the broadside of a barn Tim has decided to run across, pull a defender out, create a space, and then the balls went through into the gap, and the left back is sitting in the centre half position against a striker. And
Left back was nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
Why Cancelo was not playing?
Yes.
I don't know.
So I didn't see it because, as most of you know, I'm in the process of decorating. If I see another tin of paint, then there's not going to be a happy ending. So, were Chelsea just better on the day, or did Pep get it wrong? What do you think?
Both.
I think Chelsea have, well, Tuchel in particular has showed that he has the beatings of Guardiola. 3 times this season, he has. James, just listen to my point. 3 times this season,
he didn't interrupt you. Just
outsmarted. He sighed. I heard him. He outsmarted and out tacticalized, tacticianed, whatever you want to call it. Pep. I mean, he's outdone his tactics 3 times this season, and in 3 big games. And he's also Chelsea are now a team who have defeated Pep more than any other team in his managerial career.
I think I want to get back to was it last week or the week before I mentioned bogey teams, and the style that Chelsea played just doesn't match up with what Man City play. Man City's style of play, they struggle to get past the way that Chelsea are set up, and they don't have to change that much to deal with things. But a lot of it's down to luck, having chances and no scoring. There was chances there, and clear-cut chances. Did Chelsea have more than Man City? I think that they played on the counter-attack. And again, it's back to the possession. Everybody always used to worry about the possession. Man City can have 80-90% of the possession all they want. Chelsea didn't care. They wanted counter-attacking football, let them go up the pitch and then score in the break. And that's how they got their goal. And that's how they got a few of their chances.
Is Tuchel going to give Guardiola a run for his money next season?
No.
The only way it's going to happen is if there's some form of recruitment of a finisher, which may happen, but even then, I don't think the Chelsea squad's strong enough for it.
The reason why I was shaking my head so persistently is because last night, Chelsea were the better team. Chelsea got the tactics better, and they won unexpected goals. The FA Cup semi-final, if I remember correctly, Man City were 1-0 up, missed a penalty, and then Chelsea scored 2 goals. But I think, if I remember correctly, the expected goals victory was quite comfortable for Man City that day. Man City were the better team on the day. The result this
so that shows expected goals don't work.
Well, it shows that Man City were the better team on the day, and that's.
But expected goals don't win you matches. Actual goals do.
Stop going into this debate again. Let's not get into this debate again.
The point that Gavin was saying that Chelsea outperformed Man City all 3 games. Tuchel system, and that just.
I didn't mean outperformed. I meant in terms of tactics wise. Pep's been outsmarted 3 times.
They played 3 games, won 3. That is correct, and I'm not disputing that. All I'm saying is there's been an element of luck within that, because Man City have been the better team in some of those games, and that bit of luck towards Chelsea might have had the psychological impact on Guardiola going into last night, because that team he picked was wrong, and as soon as that team was picked, I said to my dad, that team's not going to win that final because they won't control the midfield.
James, if that's the way it works in terms of luck, I am going to stand firm with the saying that sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and I'm happy if Chelsea were lucky and they end up winning the Champions League. I'll take that.
Oh no, they weren't lucky last night. They weren't lucky last night. They were lucky in the FA Cup final. Last night they deserved to win.
As a friend of mine famously said from Aberdeen, I'd rather be lucky than second.
To finish off on this topic, I've got a question for each of you I want to ask. So, to Bruce, Dundee being promoted to the Scottish Premiership, how do you think they'll do next season?
I reckon they'll do okay. you've still got your Ross Counties and do you know that I reckon might tend to struggle. They're not going to be above mid table, I don't think. But you know, it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out.
Will they stay up?
Yeah, I think when you wear them up against Motherwell and Ross County, I think they'll be kind of maybe in about the bad bunch. But again, I don't know. Looking at next season, I don't know who's really going to finish bottom, to be honest, because there's a few that will have to fight it out. It's not as clear cut as this season. Hamilton's number one supporter sitting over there. He kind of wanted them down for the offing, but
I go well this season.
I don't think this. I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I don't think next season, like, last place is looking so clear cut. In terms of the top league.
Okay, Martin, to go on to you next. I'm going to ask you about Manchester United in terms of what do they need to do in order to perform.
Get rid of Fred
in Europe and
get rid of Fred,
and also break the duck of Solskjaer in finals and semi-finals.
Have better players. That'd help. It's, watching the Man United game, the man of the match, without doubt in my mind, was McTominay, and that's my issue. McTominay was man of the match. You've got Bruno Fernandes, you've got Cavani, you've got Rashford, you've got Greenwood, you've got attacking wing backs and Shaw and Wan-Bissaka, and McTominay was man of the match. And I think that there's players that get an extremely high rep that I don't think are as good as what the reputation says. Rashford, I sit and watch him sometimes and I think, right, he's got the ball and he's lost it. He's got the ball, he's lost it. He's hit a shot, and he'll score. Of course he'll score. You hit that many shots, you'll get some of them in. Greenwood's still young. Cavani is a great player. Fred is useless. I mean, how at Man United, Fred, he is completely. You can sit and watch him play, and the easiest passes, sidewards passes that Fred plays, and he puts them out the park. He's up with the other team, and he does it constantly. And Solskjaer still persists with having him playing. Obviously, the other option there's Matic, which Solskjaer's obviously decided that Fred's better than. But I don't think there's a depth in the squad. They need to go out, and although they've spent big, they need to keep spending big and get the right players in. Although I will slate Solskjaer, I would keep Solskjaer there. I want to see a bit of stability. Keep the same manager. I think he'll learn from his mistakes. He'll push forward. He's got good people around him, apart from the players who aren't very good. But Fred's useless.
Don't you hold back.
Fred would struggle to get a game. Fred would struggle in a game of fives. He would.
I feel like Martin has classed Fred and Hamilton Aki's in the same sort of level.
Martin, would I be able to play against Fred in fives?
Oh, you'd be able to play against him. He'd beat you, but he wouldn't beat many of the rest of us.
But James, to come on to you, I've got a two-part question for you on the Champions League finals. We've got a question for each team. We saw Thiago Silva put a post up saying that he thanked Frank Lampard because if it wasn't for Frank Lampard, he wouldn't be at Chelsea and wouldn't be experiencing this Champions League victory. How do you think, though, under Tuchel, Chelsea will perform next season? First of all, a full season under his belt, and second of all, where do we think that Pep and Man City go with a lot of people question his overthinking and tactical wise this season?
Tuchel is a man who likes to play different formations as the team goes on. I think he came into Chelsea and said, we'll build a solid unit that can hit on the break, and we've seen that Chelsea's goals that they're conceded is down, chances created. There's not been that much of a shift from Lampard. If anything, it's went down. So they became a tougher team to beat. I do expect them to be more expansive next season because Tuchel is more of an attacking-minded coach. And I do expect it to be a little bit more volatile because I think he'll have a bit of confidence now to try and pursue what he wants to do. And I think there'll be a bedding in period. So I think Chelsea fans might be in a little bit of a rocky road at the beginning of next season. But I do expect Timo Werner to score goals next season. He does get into the right positions and get a couple of goals under his belt, and then he'll take off like a rocket man. And there you go. I might have Timo Werner in my fantasy football team next year because I do expect him to be there. Man City, last night, Pep, the only way I can sum it up is it's a sin. How he performed, well, this tactics that he put together, it's like he went into the game saying, I'm going to win the Champions League with a new style. He's never played that team before. Those 11 players have never played together. So why introduce it in the Champions League final? It just doesn't seem to be consistent. Well, it is consistent with Pep Guardiola, actually, because he's a great manager, plays beautiful football, but I think there's always an element of, I have to do it differently. I have to do it my way. And yeah, I think that cost them last night. And yeah, where does it go from here? They'll just phone up the country that owns them and say, can you please sign Harry Kane or Haaland and get a striker to score goals?
Do you think he has to sacrifice what he's tried for so long and actually have an out-and-out striker?
Yes and no. I think Harry Kane would be ideal for him because Harry Kane's work rate and willing to press. And when games start to become more spread out, I think the press will be reintroduced into Man City's game. So I think Harry Kane would be the one you'd go for playing style. Mm-hmm. But in terms of goals, would he sacrifice the press for Haaland's goals and age and longevity? Yeah, we'll see. It'll be the director of football who decides anyway, not Pep.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very good point and a very good roundup of what they need to do after in the back of their UEFA Champions League performance. But speaking of UEFA, we're going to now go to Martin, who's surprisingly not a massive fan of UEFA, and they're also in the same category as Hamilton, Atkins, and Fred.
No, they're much higher up in my my list of people who are just there to fleece everybody, every possible outcome. So I want to ask if the people that are in charge of football now, are they the people that you think will take football forward? Because at this moment in time, we've saw the Super League. They've obviously been completely against that because it steps on their toes and takes teams away from them. But at the same time of that happening, they've changed the qualification process for the Europa and the Champions League to allow bigger teams an easier route in. They've actually been talking about having a whole weekend of football. So you'd have your Champions League semi-final and final all in the same week in the same venue, and have it a more Super Bowl related way, so that they can make more money. Is this about making money, or is it about making football better? Bruce, what's your thoughts on how everybody's going? Because I'm starting to get pissed off with the people that are running the game.
And you know, I would never have got that vibe, to be honest. You're cool, calm and collected as usual.
Thank you.
I think unfortunately, and I think I maybe touched on this when we were talking about the European Super League. Money talks, and that's kind of the sad realization of the way things are at the moment. People are always out to make money as quickly and as best as they can. So if this is going to bring in money, then that's probably a good reason why they would feel to do that. Do I think that running the semi-final and the final in the same week? I think that would be quite exciting. Aside from the money-making aspect, having a whole weekend of football or having a whole week of football, that has a purpose and is entertaining. At the end of the day, football is entertainment, as well as it being a sport. So I would find that quite. Yeah, I'd be up for that.
James?
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I actually agree with Bruce. At the end of last season, with obviously the Champions League and the Europa League being squashed together just to finish the tournaments before the start of this season, I thought it was quite exciting, having like a mini tournament at the end of the tournament with the semi-finals and the final in the same city. And I can just imagine if fans do go over, they could spend the week there, get money into a city's economy. And I think it'd be good if they didn't pick traditional football cities as well. I don't think like London, Paris, Rome, they don't need more tourists. I think pick more obscure cities in Europe.
I think that goes. I think that goes against.
Holiday? Yeah, a lad's holiday.
I think that goes against what UEFA are trying to actually achieve here. The bigger places will pay UEFA money so that it's hosted there. But that's why it's in the big countries.
They also have a duty to expand the profile of football.
Tell that to the people that decided to have the World Cup in Qatar.
I've got a dream of having a football tournament for a week. I don't know, somewhere in the middle of Hungary, which nobody's done before. That would be wonderful. Falkirk? No. Let's be a bit more. But could you imagine
where we're going to put the junkies when we get everybody else in?
Could you imagine Cardiff? Cardiff's not your traditional football city, but a week in Cardiff with some of the best teams in the world coming there for the week. That would be good fun. Whereas just now, you fly out to a city for a game and then you fly back the next day. You go to the game and you don't see much of the city. Let's change that.
The Old Firm fans are standing united with this one, I'm afraid.
Well, okay. Just on that point, if Rangers fans, if Rangers are in the final, let's make it
the
final and they have to get the flight that evening out the city.
Police escorted.
Protect the city. Don't let it get trashed.
Right, so we're sort of focusing on let's do it that way then. Let's focus on this idea of having a more Super Bowl style one first. Gav, how do you feel about this Super Bowl style Champions League?
I think the way that you the reason that you're so unhappy is because after Chelsea win the Champions League, it means that St Johnstone are straight through to the group stages of Europa, I believe. So you'll just be happy that they're not in the same level as Hibs.
I looked into this and it's not quite sure the league stages. They get one chance to go into the league stages, and if they miss it, they'll go into the league stages of the conference, which is still guaranteed 3 million.
Still better than Hibs. Okay.
They'll be in Europe past Christmas, which is probably the only Scottish team that's going to be there.
But to talk about UEFA and FIFA and things like that, it can't be any worse than Sepp Blatter, is the point I always stand behind. But the whole thing, I get where Bruce and James are coming from. I do understand that James obviously bigging up more the environment and getting to do a bit more tourism sort of thing.
And I get that argument.
I completely get it. But I think in that sense, you are going to miss out on the build-up. Like, as a Chelsea fan who would be in the final for the Champions League, after we bet Real Madrid, there was excitement in the Real Madrid game. After that game, the excitement and the nerves of Man City, having the build-up, a bit more of a build-up, you're not going to have as much of a big build-up and nerves when it's so close, when the games are so close to each other. I think it'd have to be looked. It wouldn't work in that week, I don't think.
But the playoffs just now, don't you think Brentford and Swansea fans were nervous, anticipating the game because it was a big game for the clubs? I think that sense of anticipation will be there, and it will actually be heightened, because I think it will be the same level of anticipation, but rather than spread out over several weeks, it will be within a short period of time. And for those 4 or 5 days, you'd be a nervous wreck.
Yeah, well, possibly. But
I tend to agree with you.
If they're wanting
I
to
tend
do
to agree
this,
with on you go, Gav. On you go. Go for
on
it.
you go, Bruce.
You crack on and I'll jump in afterwards.
I was going to say, if they're wanting to do
I
that,
tend to agree with that.
if they're wanting to do that and make it yourself, of course you do. Fucking politicians. But nah, if they're wanting to do this, they need to make it affordable for fans. They need to make it affordable for the fans. They can't sit and make it stupidly expensive, which for a fact, travel-wise, as soon as the Champions League final is going to be announced, it'll be in Budapest, just as somewhere random in Hungary. We'll say Budapest was capital. It's more likely. It's going to be prices to Budapest will increase. Same reason that Gdansk, prices to Gdansk increase. You know what I mean? It's what once the Six Nations fixtures come out in rugby, the prices for flights to places like Paris and Dublin, and they go through.
The thing that we're not talking about as much is they've never thought of the fans before. Why would they start thinking about them now? I mean, they've changed every kick-off time to. It used to be 3 o'clock on a Saturday, and fair enough to accommodate a lot of the football on television. That a lot of that has changed, but I mean, I can remember Celtic playing up in Inverness at 12 o'clock kickoffs on a Sunday and things like that. Nobody considers the fans in these decisions.
No.
And
the thing about the Man United game was that if it went on for another half an hour to an hour, it was into the next day in Poland.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or there's the one in Moscow as well when it was Man United Chelsea game. It almost went on to the next day because of how long the game was with extra time penalties. These things don't get looked at. They don't care about the fans, which is where the whole point of this topic is that it's not about that. It's more about money than anything else.
The other thing that was mentioned earlier was the new League Cup in Scotland, the Premier Sports Cup. Now, the same week that everybody jumped on the bandwagon of hating the Super League idea and the Big Six trying to get to there, the SFA decided it was a good idea to give the rights to a League Cup to a company that you had to subscribe to, which is basically exactly the same as what everybody had just been on their boat to say no to. Is that a good move?
I absolutely hate when this happens. So, I consider myself to be quite working class in terms of at times I struggle to even afford, I can't justify spending money on Sky Sports in the best of times, right? To watch normal football games. So then why would I go above and beyond to then spend money on Premier Sports, who's then decided to take however many games, and then that's an extra fee on top of if I was to have Sky Sports? It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Well, if you count the subscriptions you require to watch your team play, let's say an English Premiership, you need Sky Sports, you need BT Sports, you need Amazon Prime, you need Premier Sports, and you need a TV license. Anything else?
Use Bruce as an example for Scottish football in terms of Rangers. For the Rangers and Celtic fan and Bruce and James, it's the exact same minus Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
It's mental.
For how much is it for BT nowadays for a BT subscription? £50-60 a month. Your Sky Sports packages, if you're not on a new customer deal, is about the same, maybe 70. Premier Sports is something like $5.99 a game.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
It's absolutely mental.
And that's where, I do believe that, I know it's all about money, but an association has to come out and say, right, we've decided this season we're going to go with Sky Sports. You have to pay your subscription to Sky Sports, and you'll be able to watch the whole of Scottish. You'll be able to watch your team do everything, and you just didn't get that. It's not feasible in the money making scheme of things.
My question is,
because they can make more
out of
money
us here.
just splitting up and
Have
doing
you ever
everything.
played the game Monopoly?
Yes,
That's why it won't happen. Because
exactly.
one team, if one company got exclusive rights, they just bump the prices up to the level that you'd be playing for all four, if not even more, because they control the market in full. The segmentation of the market is annoying because you have 4 subscriptions and that the psychological thing, but the cost would actually be the same, if
Who
not
has what?
even more.
Out of all of
Unless
us here, what subscriptions do we have for football in terms of for us watching our teams?
Everything
Me-
apart from Premier Sports.
same.
So I have Sky, I have Amazon Prime. I don't have BT. I don't have Premier.
I've got everything bar Premier.
I, at the moment, up until now, couldn't justify doing anything. However, new flat, I've got it all sorted. I'm going to have everything. It's going to be great. Apart from Premier Sports, nah, they're in my bad books.
Sports Hub podcast boycotting Premier Sports. You heard it here
Right.
first.
I'm not doing it.
I mean, is that where football is? I mean, I've watched, I listened to Talk Sport quite a lot, and Simon Jordan always goes on about what the Premier League should do is make their own TV channel and just say, look, this is our TV channel, this is what we do. That way they're not giving any money to Sky, they're not giving any money to BT. Everything's coming in name and the subscriptions go to them.
Martin, as a football fan, is it too much to ask to have one subscription for it not to be absolutely extortionate to watch a decent game of football and follow your club?
I mean, when you take it into account, I mean, James is only one of us as well that also has the season ticket along with every other. So the amount of money James is spending over the course of a year is
Too much.
quite a bit, to be fair.
To watch his team come in second, it's horrendous.
Didn't even watch them this season because of COVID.
Aye.
Ticket to watch it on Celtic TV, which was 10 minutes behind.
Just be glad you didn't see Kevin Thompson on the Hun TV.
Oh no, sorry, that was just Shane Duffy running. It looked
but
so back to my question: is it too much to ask of, like, as a football fan? Is it too much to ask that this is affordable for us to watch football?
Do I become the nasty Tory and say that there's economics involved with this?
I think unfortunately it's turned into the money side of the game. Basically, all the teams are trying to win. They want to pay players as much as they can to win, so that they can have better chance of getting better players.
So that should come to the detriment of the fans.
It has, and it continues to do that.
TV money, they increase the ticket of match prices. They increase the prices of your replica shirts because they need the money to compete.
And Spurs is going to get any dearer than they already are.
They would if they needed the money to compete. And football is now a business, and it's hard for fans to get their heads around because it is the romance attached to it, and I understand that all. But
James, it's ridiculous. I have a family. I have a family with 2 girls, and I need to put food on the table. And then they expect me to put £70 out on a bloody football shirt.
Paying the wages.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Bruce is like a midget. He struggles to put food on the table.
But
that it's mental. Do you know, like, working class families who have a family and need to provide for the family, and then if I want a football top, I've got to pay £70 on top of whatever I'm paying to watch the bloody game on the telly.
I agree.
As well, you look at what...
that. But then the economic reality is, if there was no TV money, or TV money was reduced substantially, if there was matchday tickets to reduce, all the replica shirts and all that reduced, the club would have less money to spend on players. They wouldn't be able to compete.
But with that, all the clubs in that league would have less money. So they would be competing on a level playing field apart from European competitions. And when you consider places like England, who are one of the most expensive countries in the world for the amount of money they bring in football, it's never going to happen because all these, there's not football fans in charge of state companies or football teams. It's businessmen and people who are just in it to make money or draw money from the teams. And I think that's where the problem first arises, where as soon as there's money changing hands, businessmen have jumped in and decided, oh, that's my money, I'll take it.
The thing is, I've sat here and listened to this wee bit for the last kind of few minutes, just like you have your moment, but there's 3 points I want to make here. Martin, you made a very good point about the Premier League having their own TV programme. They've done that in terms of the league sponsorship. It was the Barclays Premier League. They scrapped that because they just went on their own merits, and they're still making as much money from it. So again, that could be a possibility. With Bruce saying about the price of replica shirts, and James mentioned that, James, I get it's economics and there's reason behind it. Bruce, I think that, in my opinion, if I'm having to pay £70 for a football shirt, I'm expecting you to pay £100 for a football shirt because you require more material than I do. The last point I'm going to make is that Germany have a very good system. Germany ticket prices are very low.
Great system.
For people, and they can still go to games, but they also still sell their rights on TV because I'm sure it's BT Sport that have the German league games. Prices are low. Is that come down to the 50 plus 1 or whatever the rule is over there compared to the businessman ownership that James was mentioning over here?
Yeah, Bayern Munich are still one of the best teams in the world.
Exactly.
But that's because Bayern Munich basically buy the best players in Germany and basically collect them all up and then send them through there in the European competitions. 50 plus 1 is probably never going to happen in England.
Never.
Too much money in it.
It's a lovely thought, but never happen.
But again, the reason why they picked £70 is because they would have done their profit maximisation, and they'll work out when supply equals demand that gives the most money to the club. And if that was £20, they'd set it at £20. If it was £200, they set it at £200. It's profit driven, and that's the economics of it. Is it what football is historically? No, it's not. And I understand why fans are angry, frustrated, and many more descriptive words of the same nature. But that's where football is heading. I don't agree with it, but that's where it's heading.
Well, I think we've sort of said as much as we can on the subject. I think everybody agrees with the way that the people in charge of football are inadvertently moving away from what the fans want, but doing it for the reasons of drawing more money in and making sure their teams are going to succeed further. Still not right in my opinion, but it's never going to change, to be fair. So rounds off most of our stuff.
Can I say one very quick point, just because I think it
yes.
highlights it well? Motherwell next season, free season tickets. If you've got a season ticket this season, if they get relegated because they can't afford to get a couple of players in, will their fans be happy?
Of course not.
No, and another team did it. Partick Thistle did it when they were in the Premier League. They had a budget of the amount of money they would spend on a player per week. It wasn't. It's like £500-600 per week they were getting. Wasn't a lot of money, and they got relegated. And now they're 2 divisions down. Actually, they got promoted there, but they were 2 divisions down last season.
Yeah, so that's what I guess I mentioned. That point is things that might appear very generous in the short term will have a backlash from fans in the long term, potentially. And it's business owners will think of that as well.
I'll add to that point
James
as
knows
well
that very well because he's a Spurs fan, so he knows that point very well.
And Celtic
I'll-
fan, a £50 gift voucher if I pay my full price for a season ticket after the
How much is your season ticket price, by just out of curiosity?
£550.
See that? There you go. I know,
What-
being a Hearts fan,
what-
they've been advertised as £330, I think, for a goal, a silver one
Yeah, and
for a newly promoted
£50
team.
gift voucher alongside that.
You get 10% off at the pie stand at Easter Road if you get a New Year's season ticket.
Well, James
What-
can get 2/3
but-
of a replica
what-
T-shirt with his.
What I would
£50
say on the
gift.
Motherwell point is, with a club like Motherwell, however, I wouldn't be surprised if there was fans choosing to donate their season ticket money
A lot of them did.
anyway. Yeah. But
There was a thing where I think it was Motherwell. If it wasn't Motherwell, it was a team similar, where a team turned round and said, "We will give you your money back for last season's season ticket, but you have to buy next season's season ticket." So, but a lot of, I think it was only taken up by, I want to say between 30 and 40%.
was that not part of the Thistle?
No, it was between 30 and 40% that actually decided that they wanted the money back. Everybody else, so it was a good amount. It was a good offer from the club to then say for the fans then to turn it down. But the point I wanted to touch on quickly is Hibs were one of the teams that asked players to take a wage cut to make sure that they were going to stay in the straight and narrow, and then proceeded to spend 120,000 on Kevin Nisbet. In the time where they've just asked everybody else to take a wage cut. Now, it didn't look great at the time, but then in January there he was sort of touted for a £3 million move. So it was obviously it was a business move to the degree, and they did argue that point at the time. But yes, that is a difficult sort of stance to take with it. Anyway, I think that's about enough on that subject. We'll move to the round table, and it would be awesome if I could figure out how to do a round table right now. Usually what we'll do is we'll sort of look at what's on Twitter and we'll see what is trending and try to do something with that. We've got SAS Who Dares Wins, and we've got Masked Dancer. So Masked Dancer, what is your favourite celebration for a goal? Because there have been some great dancers. Is there any celebrations for a football goal that sticks in your head that you can remember? Gav is nodding his head profusely. Is it like a midget, some sort of tiny dancer, or?
Well, to be fair, he was quite a small player, the one I'm going to say. But yeah, I loved the South Africa World Cup. Not for the vuvuzelas, but for the fact that you had all these African teams doing the dances, and it was the first goal opening of the tournament. I'm going to see if I can get his name. It's Sifiwe Shabalala. Ran over with 5 or 6 teammates. He did the whole elbow round in a circle, driving the car. It sticks out in my mind. I think it's one of the best ones. But apart from that, you've probably got George Weah running over to the corner flag, doing his little bottom dance. It was quite cool.
Bruce, are you thinking of anything in particular?
I quite like the Daniel Sturridge dance, or as FIFA like to call it, the wave. But if you ask
Can we get an example?
No. If you ask me to do that, I'll probably dislocate something somewhere that's probably not. No do that. But
I bet you James will do it. No, James can do it for us.
A big fan of the Daniel Sturridge dance.
James, you're too. You need to be
the
like
waves.
Richard. That's a bit more
Feeling
bouncy.
the waves.
To clarify, Daniel Sturridge has said it is called the Daniel Sturridge dance, though, and no the wave.
Oh shit! I've got another one.
What is it?
The Asamoah Gyan when he was at Sunderland, but it was when Bolo Zendon came over and couldn't actually do it and just danced a bit like a fanny.
James, can you think of any celebrations that stick in your head?
2. I think the first one is pretty obvious. The robot, Peter Crouch, the World Cup 2006. when
Top
he had
quality.
that wee spell in the England team. I've actually thought of a third one. Second one is Robbie Keane with his cartwheel, front row, and then guns. And I saw that a few times in a Celtic shirt. But my favourite Celtic celebration, the one and only Effie Ambrose. He front flipped, back flipped so many times that I was like, don't let the sun go down on me. And I thought the game would have reached the night, the amount of times he was cartwheeling and just kept going and going and going into the dugout. It was remarkable.
So the ones that stick in my mind, I remember it was Lua, and he was obviously constantly flipping and cartwheeling, and I think it was Sam Allardyce. I might be wrong on the manager, but I think Sam Allardyce had told him to stop doing it in case he gets injured.
Was it not Harry Redknapp when he was at Portsmouth?
Was Harry Redknapp at Portsmouth? You're right. So he scored, done his flip, twisted his ankle, had to go off with his. The other good ones I remember, Hibs ones actually. Tam McManus for Hibs, he was sort of kind of getting in trouble. He's maybe a pundit sort of now. He knelt down the line and started the line after it was they were all down in the paper for possibly doing drugs, and so he was on the goal line and right
Typical
along
behaviour in Leith.
The other thing that he done, again, another night out they had, they were strippers. So after he scored, he went to the stanchion behind the goal, the pole that's holding the net up, and he's done a quick routine round the pole, just done a wee.
Martin, it's funny you mentioned about Hibs players and their shenanigans, because I think this week we've seen one with the now Dundee player, Jason Cummings, performing his tribute to Sears Chandelier.
I came in like a wrecking ball. That was awesome. He is off his nut, and I don't know how that didn't fall down and kill him. And
another celebration I quite liked was Samaras at Celtic. Did a bow and arrow. He'd go like that. I think it was from playing Assassin's Creed.
Another celebration that does stick in my head was Gaza. I'm just leaving that there.
Which one? Because there was a few. Was it one that he kissed McCoist? Was it the one
where he did have a few, but the one that sticks in my head was always the flute, not for necessarily particularly good reasons.
You're not playing
not
that
particularly necessarily. However, it does stick in my head when you mention celebrations.
It's
and I can guarantee it sticks in a lot of people's heads.
It's ironic that he mentions Gaza after Martin mentioned about snotting a line,
And it was just 2 weeks ago, was it, that Rangers fans were in George Square trashing the place, singing anti-Catholic songs.
All I said was it stuck in my head. That was the question. Which celebration would you consider memorable and sticks in your head? That sticks in my head.
There's a lot that's the one that sticks in your head.
If you get a chance, there is YouTube. There is I think it's a Norwegian team. And they come up with
my god, they're amazing
celebrations. There's a guy in the fishing rod, and he goes to the fishing rod and pulls down. The other guy's just.
Is it the bicycle one?
The bicycle's brilliant. There's always the one when there's no fans there, and he jumps over the stands and sits in the.
The one that he's on the toilet as well.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Aye, that's
we've got too much time on our hands, eh?
Well, some of us are.
Yeah, the madman across the water in Norway.
Aye, they are. They're mental over there. Aye. Anyway, I think that's about us. Thank you for listening.
The most nonchalant ending to a podcast yet.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Hub podcast. If you get a time, one of the 4 or 5 years that actually make it this far, if you could like it or subscribe, or I don't know, it's just click the button that says like and
See what happens.
yeah.
I'm just going to do a wee test if Mitchell makes it this far. Mitchell, love lies bleeding.